Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Liz Benferhat.
Anise Benferhat.
Anise Benferhat. Welcome to our home in the Bronx in New York City. And this is part 2 of my circle training kickoff week events. And this video is all about the healing power of emotions. And so our goal, my goal and hope for this video is really to offer some structure, some evidence-based structure and understanding to the concept of healing, which can so often feel very amorphous and a little woo-woo for many people and therefore not take it very seriously. And it's also something that many of us have a very intuitive sense of, right? And one of the things that I've been so inspired by in really diving into the healing power of emotions and really learning what emotions are from the fields of neuroscience and clinical psychology is that we live at such an exciting time where there's a lot of science that's emerging to really back up and edify some of those intuitive senses of things. And so especially within the context of being change makers, of working on behalf of huge, existential, challenging, complex issues, and especially working on behalf of them within this systemic way where we understand all the interconnectedness of it, and just living in this time of media and mass information where we are just bombarded with so much information about the challenges going on in this world. There's a lot of very normal feelings that come up with that, right? And part of the mission here at We Heal for All is really this one of collective healing. And figuring out what that means for us in this 21st century, what that means for us as change makers, how that can help both sustain the work that we're doing to shift stuck institutions and bring in new, the cultural change that's needed, as well as maybe even shifting things at a deeper level to create a world that's more just and sustainable and beautiful. So, I'm so excited. So, this is the love of my life, my husband, and I learn so much from you all the time. And so it's just such a gift to get to, bring the conversations that we have at home in our couch in our living room out to the world. So that's what we're going to do today. And before I hand it over to Anise, because I know I'm jabbering on here, I want to just give a shout out. So part of this week, this series of events, is because my circle training is live and is ready for you. So as part of that, I've got a special promotional offer that will be available until Thursday at midnight Eastern Time. And you can save a bunch of money and join the circle training, get some concrete tools on how to facilitate community-based emotional processing on behalf of these big-ass topics that we all care so deeply about in order to sustain the work, in order to grapple with some of the internal experiences that normally and naturally come with these big topics. And some of the feedback that I've gotten from the training is that this part of emotions, because this is really what the circle model is really built on, is this emerging body of research that we have about how emotions work and how best they're supported in community. That's some of the most helpful things that people took from the training. So check it out. I've got the promo in the link here, connected to this video. And without further ado, I just want to hand it over to Anise to introduce himself and say anything that he wants to say to kick us off.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is my first Instagram live of all time, so this is pretty cool. First Instagram video of all time, period, actually. So I am a psychiatrist in New York City. My main thing that I do is that I'm in private practice, but I also teach at Montefiore Medical Center and Albert Einstein College of Medicine, in case anybody knows about that place in the Bronx. I teach mostly psychotherapy. I also teach to medical students using improv to teach them collaborative care and trauma-informed care. I also do improv with my improv team, Big Brad Improv. Shout out. Really awesome group of people that we get to play together. And I do some other stuff too, writing, and but those are the main things. And I'm excited to be here today. What I really feel inspired by in Liz's work and your work, Liz, is that you're working to bring this healing power of emotion to people at scale, and that's really cool. I've specialized in working with people one-on-one and using the healing power of emotion to help people transform and heal and process and integrate, but doing it at scale is really, really cool. So honored and excited to be here.
So, I mean, with that, I'd love to just dive in,
Let's dive.
Let's do it. Deep dive, cannonball. So, emotions are one of these things that we all have, right? And we all have our own understanding of what emotions are and what they mean to us. And we also live at a time where it's a really exciting time when it comes to better understanding emotions from a scientific point of view, from a clinical psychology point of view, from like a practice oriented, like how do we practically work with emotions, be in relationship with our emotions in a way that's really effective in terms of processing and integrating, and which requires us to understand what they are. The reality is that for most of us, right, emotions, we still live in a culture where emotions are pretty misunderstood. We're kind of like emotionally illiterate as a world, which, there's no shade on that. It's just, part of the evolutionary process of our culture, and, really bringing this new understanding and this cutting edge research more to the world, and integrating it into our schools and our institutions and our own, personal lives and everything like that. And so I would love to even start off with kind of a seemingly simple question, but it's actually quite complex in many ways, of like, what the hell are emotions? And what are they?
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, big question. So I'm not I do some research in education, but I'm not an emotions researcher. I'm a clinician, but I kind of am work off of the research that's been done by other people. And so there's a lot of different ways to understand emotions, and there's like spiritual ways to think about it, and there are of course cognitive ways to think about it. But I like to, my first thought when I hear that question is evolutionarily. So thinking of us as not just people and humans, but mammals and animals, we evolved emotions to drive behaviors. If you think about decisions that you make, oftentimes they are driven by an emotion that you feel. And I'm really kind of going to basically be summarizing a lot of stuff that's in this awesome book, The Healing Power of Emotion by Diana Fascia, who developed the type of therapy that I do, which is AEDP. And so you can think of emotions as being something that we have evolved to help us deal with the environment around us. So like we're walking on the way to, if we think like thousands of years ago, walking on the way to like another village, and there's a lion on the path. The emotion there, that's something unexpected. So that'll inspire an emotion in us. Probably you could imagine that would be fear. And that fear is going to drive the behaviors, whatever behavior we need to find safety. So emotions they're not just things that we feel, they are there to help us survive and thrive. And so fear will help us find safety. Anger will help us protect ourselves from any threat or danger, or protect boundaries that have been crossed, or like right a wrong if we've been wronged. Sadness will help us to grieve and mourn something that's been lost. Disgust will help us to purge something that it doesn't fit or that isn't right, that shouldn't be there. And I'm going for the core emotions. To my understanding, most in the field of research of emotions agree on the 5 core emotions, which are just the ones from Inside Out. If you haven't seen that movie, you should see that movie. They did their research. It's really well done. So that's anger, fear, joy, sadness, and I always miss one. Disgust. Yeah, anger, fear, joy, sadness, and disgust. And then depending on who you ask, other people would add other ones, but you can count on those 5 as being core emotions. And so joy helps you to celebrate and connect and explore, like a joyful curiosity. And that's my first and foremost way of thinking of emotions, as a very healthy, normal, and essential part of our physiology to help drive our behaviors, help us thrive, help us survive.
I love that. I love bringing it back to the physiology and bringing back to the evolutionary drive or evolutionary purpose behind these sensations that we're having within our bodies and within our nervous systems.
Because emotions very much live in the body. Like, even if you have a spiritual framework for them, we experience emotions in our physical bodies. And so I don't think you can really talk about emotions without talking about the body.
And so then onto the word healing. And again, like I was saying earlier, healing can very much, so many of us have an intuitive sense of what healing is, what our own healing journeys are. Within the realm of clinical psychology, how is healing used or defined or thought about, or within let's even just take it less broad than that, within the way that you've been trained in AEDP, which stands for Accelerated Experiential Dynamic Psychotherapy, which is a whole nother conversation, but just within the modalities that you've been trained in, tell me about your understanding of the word healing.
Yeah, I'm very happy and excited to. I'll just plug these books. So this is kind of a more dense book that has so much wisdom and gold in it that if you can get into it, is just so brilliant.
And let me even read the subtitle real quick. So it's The Healing Power of Emotion, Affective Neuroscience Development in Clinical Practice. So affect, AFFECT, which is emotions.
And that's by Diana Fascia with other authors too. And then there's this one, which is much more accessible and so easy to read and so intuitive. It's Not Always Depression, by Hillary Jacobs Hendel. She's a really brilliant author and has lots of offerings on her website about emotions too, if you want to check those out. But so anyway, to talk about healing, we have to sort of talk about what is it that's getting healed in the first place? Like, what is the wound or the trauma? And so and again, I'm speaking from my clinical perspective. I'm not speaking on behalf of the whole field of research, but I take a very broad view of trauma to be any time when your emotion didn't get to be fully felt or fully expressed. You felt fear, but you were alone with your fear. No one understood it. You weren't able to actually use that to drive you to create safety for yourself. And so the fear didn't get processed. It didn't get integrated. And then it can get stuck in the body. And you felt angry, but you didn't feel safe to express it. You didn't feel safe to even feel it or acknowledge that you feel it. For example, that's a common one. And so you just keep it to yourself, and you feel ashamed of the fact that you even felt the anger, and then it leads to anxiety or depression or any number of what we call psychopathology, which is like kind of a broad term for psychological challenges or issues. And so that is how I think about trauma, and that is how I think about psychological challenges, is that in many cases, not every single case, there's a lot of stuff out there, but we had the natural experience of having an emotion, but the natural process of having it expressed and then integrated gets interrupted. Like, emotions kind of get felt like a wave, but when then that gets interrupted, the wave doesn't get completed, it can get stuck, and so that leads to anxiety. Anytime that emotion comes up, anytime a reminder of that situation comes up when you felt the emotion, anxiety comes in to kind of push it down. It could be anxiety, it could be shame, it could be guilt. There's a number of things. Anxiety is a common one that pushes it down. Even subconsciously, you may not be aware of it. And then that anxiety is so uncomfortable that it drives us to just occupy ourselves with something else, or what we call defenses, sort of like projection. Oh no, you're angry. I'm not angry. You're the one that's angry. Or grabbing a drink, or putting on another episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I'm guilty of that one. And so just to avoid the feeling. Like anxiety is a lot about avoiding the experience that's uncomfortable or unbearable. And so how do we heal that? We basically want to help your physiology, help your body to have that natural life cycle of the emotion the way that we evolved to kind of undo that trauma so that we can feel that feeling and experience that feeling. And so that's how I think about healing, is processing, integrating according to the design that we have evolved. And even if you want to take intelligent design, like whatever your view is, how we got these physiological mechanisms, we want to facilitate those. So you're not, as a therapist, I'm not really trying to do something to my therapy clients. I'm trying to facilitate safety, help co-create a sense of safety with the client so that they are able to access some of those feelings and experiences that have been so unbearable, that they felt so alone with, that they had to push them down even subconsciously or perhaps consciously. And so if we can create that safety, help to make it less unbearable, less overwhelming, and help the person to just acknowledge and experience, when that happened, I was so afraid, and to just feel the fear, then there's a number of tools that we have to facilitate that fear or that anger or that joy or whatever the emotion was to get processed naturally. And if we can do that, there's going to be a positive, healthy experience on the other end of it. It could be a number of things. It could be calm or relief, or maybe even some sadness about how much pain you've experienced. It could be excitement. It could be hope. There could be a number of things on the other side of it, and then we just want to keep processing it and integrate that experience of having felt and processed that emotion. We really want to integrate it. And that is kind of a very short summary of the AEDP approach. And it's really, number one, all about creating safety first and validating all the ways that the person has been able to survive up until this point, and all the ways that they are open to that experience, even if it's just a little bit. We really want to affirm that first, and then just see what we can expand about being able to experience. So that's a very long answer.
No, it was awesome. And I mean, I think it just points to how much there is within this conversation.
So much.
Of healing emotions, or what it means within the clinical psychology world. And I love it, and what I hear in that, and what the circle model that I've developed really is based on from that, is this knowing, this understanding that there are certain conditions that can be created to support the processing of emotions and that natural wave, the completion of these natural waves.
We are wired to heal. It's kind of like a mantra in AEDP. We are wired to heal.
We are wild to hear. Excuse me.
We are wild to hear.
We are wild to hear.
Oh, that's also true.
But
for us specifically.
For us, whatever. But totally, it's, which I think is, that in and of itself is so inspiring, because so often many of us don't touch our emotions, or don't, we shut them down, we push them away, we power through them.
Sometimes we have to,
Sometimes because we have to.
Yeah.
And then also because it's scary, right? Like there's that fear of like, oh, if I start to touch this, I'm just gonna, spiral downward, or I won't be able to reground myself.
I'll just feel bad.
I'll just feel bad. What's the purpose of feeling bad?
Or I might lose control and people will hate me. There's so many things that could go into that kind of resistance to experiencing what we have within us. We
And
want to
then
make that more safe.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And just tying it back to the experience of change makers and the experience of being in relationship with all these big issues that we're facing as a world, big changes that we're going through as a world. We're taught, and the reality is this real sense of urgency, this real reality of urgency, right? That can make, and this real call to action, which both make sense and are needed, right? Because time is ticking on many things, and it's really great that so many of us are compelled to action. And the case that I see is really necessary to make is that it is beneficial to us to also incorporate and integrate and create space and time for really processing the feelings that are driving that action, in order to have healthier responses, more constructive responses, and then also just to sustain this engagement. Because one of the biggest things that us as change makers we run into is burnout, fatigue, chronic stress, things that then affect our ability, our interpersonal relationships, our working relationships, our community organizing, and also, we end up just turning our backs on the things that we care the most about.
And I'll add, it's when you have an emotion that hasn't been processed, that leads to burnout for sure. It leads to stress, it leads to anxiety, and that obviously takes a toll. And also, that's a part of us that has capacity, that has power, that is being exiled, that we're avoiding experiencing, we're kind of keeping that part separate. And that part can really help us, that part evolved to help us deal with the situation. So not only does exiling those parts or having unprocessed emotions lead to challenges, but it also handicaps us by taking away some of our capacity. And so I think of the Power Rangers, if you remember, they had the Megazord where all the robots came together. But imagine one of those robots was missing because it felt angry, so they didn't want it to be a part of the big Megazord. Then you're kind of fighting with one arm or one leg or no arms, or it's a silly example, but that's how I think of it. When you have one part of you that's not allowed to be at the party, then you have less members on the team that have good ideas. And so when you are able to process that anger, you can recognize, let's just say, this person crossed a boundary, I need to address that, I need to protect this boundary. Or, I'm really afraid of the rising sea levels, I need to do something to protect my family, the next generations, or even honestly our generation. We need to make sure wherever we live is going to be in a place that's safe. Or you might recognize how passionate you are about helping people who are disproportionately affected. But it takes accessing those emotions to really gain clarity about those things, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, that also ties to the whole systems approach that is really it's the current paradigm of development, of economic development, of sustainable development, is really understanding the issues that we face, whether it's extreme poverty or climate injustice or water and sanitation or healthcare or anything like that, as a system and from the systemic perspective. And that's also why I love talking about emotions, and I feel like really this next stage of being change makers, of being development practitioners, of being folks who are taking action to address the global and cultural issues that we face as a world, really seeing ourselves as a whole system too, right? Not only seeing our society, our economy, our culture as a whole system, but then also seeing ourselves as change agents, as a whole system. And so making the case and seeing the value in caring for and processing and acknowledging this dimension of the work, the emotional, psycho-spiritual dimension of the work.
Yeah, I love that. It's what I love about Liz's work. What I also love is that there are people who are avoiding thinking about these big changes in the world because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think you have a lot of tools that you're offering to help people to face it in a way that's not as overwhelming, but that is realistic and real, to help people to actually start to change their behaviors, change the way where they spend their money, how they vote, all the things that are really important if they can change on a massive scale.
Yeah, that titration.
That's the collective healing,
Yeah.
by helping people on a large scale to start to shift their perspective.
Shift our behaviors. I love it. I love it. Well, this is awesome, and
It's over already? We're going to time for another hour?
I want to be mindful of everyone's time.
No problem.
But what I hope this does is give you a little bit more framework, and at the very least pique your interest about this big body of work that's emerging around emotions, the science of emotions, how best to be in relationship with emotions, manage emotions, support emotions. And I hope you come check out my circle training, which is all about that. It's all about a tool, a healing-oriented tool, meaning an emotion-centered tool that you can take and make your own, adapt to your unique community needs, your unique style, and your unique calling, in order to be really effective in supporting your people and supporting yourself. Because I know that's also why I offer circles, is because I need this kind of space, right? None of us have all the answers to any of the questions that we're grappling with, but we all have wisdom, and the way to tap into that wisdom, because that's part of what's on the other side of processing emotions, right, is more vitality, it's more clarity, it's more confidence, it's more calm. It's all these different life-giving, life-generating type of qualities that can really help us give birth to the solutions that we need, the solutions that we need for this world. And if you dug this, if you were into this, keep an eye out, because we're going to do a mini self-paced course that provides a bit more of a structured exploration of this science of emotion, the healing power of emotions. So yeah, anything you want to close us out with?
You should mention that part of this promotion, there's also extra stuff included that wouldn't be available. There's the discount, but there's also extra stuff that's part of it.
Totally. So, if you join, and again, we're closing this out on Thursday, so this is, got 2 more days to sign up. I would really love to see you there. And if you join, you get additional one-on-one time with me, so more one-on-one coaching in addition to the bi-weekly office hours, group coaching that's already just comes with the training, as well as some more opportunities to practice offering your circle through the We Heal for All community. So just a little bit extra personalized support and really bringing this work to the world in a way that is authentic and meaningful and makes sense to you, because there's a lot of different dimensions to this work, right? I find that even in offering community-based emotional processing and even writing a description of it, you're educating people. You're educating people about why this is important, why this is needed, and that's where all this work comes from, right? There's a lot of work we need to do in terms of upping our emotional literacy as a world, and again, I say that with a lot of love and humility, because it's something that we're all continuing to learn. So that's part of this. It's part of this offer.
Liz heals me all the time and helps me be a better healer too. So let her help you to help your people. She's good at it. That's my.
And I hope it getting to meet my lovely partner, my lovely husband, gives you a better sense of just the wealth of information and practice and skill and wisdom that is also going into all of these offerings, and really, is the foundation of these offerings. And if you're in New York or New Jersey and you're looking for some support, if you're looking for a psychiatrist or psychotherapist, check out this guy. He's awesome.
AniceBenferhat.com. I'm on TikTok as Funny Feelings Doctor.
Yep.
You can check that out too.
Cool. All right. Well, from our homes to yours, we're sending you so much love. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye.